I think there's a number of really exciting ideas, and a number of those have started to translate into pretty scaled, impactful organizations. And I think I'm incredibly excited about, now that we've started to crack open that stigma, what it's going to mean for access to high quality care and support for so many people, and for so many people to start to adopt rather meaningful mindfulness and meditation practice and bake that into the culture and the ways that they operate. And there's a lot of different ways and strategies we all use to support that. And I'm really excited about unlocking access for far more people to that support.
Hey friends, welcome to the Changing Work podcast. We are so glad you're here.
My name is Nick.
And I'm Scott.
And this is the podcast where we talk about changing work from the inside out.
So if you're into making the workplace and the world a better experience via conscious business practices, stick around. This is for you. Hi, Karan. How are you doing?
Hey, Scott. Good to see you. I could have heard you
and
Jen talk for a little while longer there. That was fun.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for joining. I'm going to give a little bio on you, and then we'll get rocking here. We're going to be talking about investing in mental wellness. So Karan is the COO and Chief People Officer of Headspace, where he is working to create a world where everyone can be kind to their mind. And he's been a pioneer in digital mental health for over a decade, co-founding Ginger in 2011, and then ultimately combining with Headspace in 2021, resulting in the creation of an end-to-end mental health platform. First of all, congratulations on all of that. That is amazing.
Thanks, Scott. It's been an adventure. It's been a journey.
Yeah. Well, tell us, actually, before we jump into all of that, what is one thing that makes your heart light up?
It's easy. My 8-year-old daughter now, she's just so much fun. Like seeing the world through her eyes and with her curiosity and kind of maintaining a beginner's mind is just, it's been beautiful. It's been a whole lot of fun.
That's fantastic. It's and almost, when I ask this question, that's almost what everybody says. And it's right. When we think about the world, when we think about what sparks joy, it's that connection, it's that next generation, it's that hope, it's that beauty that exists in the next. So thank you for that.
It's for me, it's also just as much like getting out of your own head. I think, it was one of those things. It was a defining moment I remember in my career when she was born at Ginger at the time. And it was sort of a forcing function that you had to live in a world of less but better. And you had to stay focused, and you had to create boundaries, and you have to do some of the things we're going to talk about now because I wasn't doing them so well back then. So it's very much a good reminder for me.
It's a good learning journey that we're all on in that regard. So for those of us that don't know that much about first Ginger and now Headspace, could you talk about what those things are?
Yeah, certainly. So, I think you alluded to it when we kicked off. I mean, we can talk about sort of Headspace more broadly as this comprehensive mental health care platform, which really means, everything from mindfulness and meditation resources. I think many of you might be familiar with the orange dot on your phone, all the way to, clinical support, which could include access to a coach, a therapist, even a psychiatrist to prescribe medications to really help employees or individuals or members as part of a health plan get access to great care and great support.
So needed. And I'm curious, we've gone through we were talking about BC and AC before COVID, after COVID. Yeah. I'm curious your insights on like the current state of mental well-being in the workplace.
There's definitely there is the pre-COVID, COVID, and post-COVID or after COVID story for sure. And I like to think of it as in some ways mental wellness and mental health more broadly have gone from the back room to the boardroom, right? And from this topic, as you and Jen were also describing, which was highly stigmatized, was no-go zone, certainly for individuals and employees, but even, at leadership levels. And increasingly, I think there's been a recognition that it actually belongs, at the executive level in the board, because it's so foundational to companies being able to deliver on the promise, deliver on, what they set out to achieve, because it's ultimately always about people. It's always about finding ways to ensure you can take care of your people with the tools and resources and culture and context for them to be able to deliver effectively. So I'm really hopeful based on the fundamental change in mindset that's happened since COVID. And I think it's we're not out of the woods yet. There's still big, great deals of stigma, and there's still, for some industries in some places, there hasn't been as much movement as I think we'd like. But I overall, I think a pretty significant shift in people recognizing that this is foundational to creating a productive and effective and ultimately happy workplace culture.
Great. So I know that Headspace released a workplace, what was it called? Workforce State of Mind report. Any insights from that you've discovered and kind of given us an overview?
Yeah, we certainly did. So we surveyed almost 2,000 employees, CEOs, benefits leaders. We've been doing that for the last now 6 years. This is our 6th annual report. So it's been fascinating to see some of those trends, even pre-COVID all the way to now. And I'd say one of the biggest insights I think that we've gleaned this year was just how much work stress has been seeping into the personal lives of employees and their relationships. Relationships in particular, I think was a really critical part of the story this year. And whether that's with your coworker, with your manager, with your leader, like that relationship had such a profound impact on your relationships outside of work. And one of the pretty incredible stats was just how much of an impact it actually had on, in some ways, destroying relationships outside work when you didn't have a productive workplace environment.
Wow, that's a really powerful and kind of scary thing to think about. So when we think about if you're a leader or an HR leader watching this, what can we do? What is the role of the company in helping to mitigate some of those challenges so that you don't have the knock-on effects that you're talking about?
It's so fascinating. I've been reflecting on this too, because we've been taking an inside-out approach to say, well, here's what we learned from others, and how do we look at our own teams, and then how do we look at the companies and other HR leaders that we serve, and I think it is taking this inside-out approach, which is it starts with culture and with context, and really sort of setting the right infrastructure and right expectations and right values, and then I wouldn't say it ends with, but it includes meaningful resources and benefits, and ensuring that people have access to programs like a Headspace, or through their health plan, and as part of their health plan to get great access to care. So it could be very small, tangible, very explicit examples of things like great calendar management, ending meetings on time, kicking off with a mindful minute, creating space in the day for people to be able to unpause and restart and recharge. It could be as profound as goal setting and thinking about company org structure, and ensuring that you actually have a culture where people aren't working around the clock, and they don't have an expectation that is actually how they need to be working at all times. So I think it's a both and, context plus resourcing that I think ultimately solves for this.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. I'm also wondering if part of the challenge is the knock-on effect is about our external relationships. I'm wondering if having stronger, better, deeper, more connected relationships with our work colleagues helps mitigate, the outside problems with relationships.
Absolutely. I think many of us are probably familiar now with whether it's the WHO report or whether it's the recent Surgeon General report around the epidemics of loneliness, and a big part of that in adulthood has to do with the lack of these strong social connections, and I think that is actually one of the biggest knock-on effects from COVID, which was in a world where many people are working in virtual environments. They don't have that sort of interstitial kind of in-person booster shots that are so important to kind of resetting. And so stuff builds up, and stress builds up, and toxicity can build up. And I think it's so critical for managers, for leaders to be thinking about and investing in ways to build those relationships in the workplace, because many people find strength from that. I think that one of the things that made me smile and just made me happy as I read the report was really the fact that so many people, I think close to 70% of people, find that relationship with their managers actually can also be incredibly impactful or positively impact their feeling of belonging and connection and inclusion. And so it can work both ways, right? And I think that's maybe part of the headline here.
That's right. I think this is the research over and over and over points to how powerful the role of the manager is in our happiness.
That's right.
I read once that our relationship with work is the biggest, one of the biggest factors in our overall life satisfaction, and our relationship with our manager is the single biggest factor in our relationship with work.
That's right.
So you put the math together, our relationship with our manager, this might be the most important relationship in our life for many, many people.
Yeah, absolutely. And just by proxy for how much time you end up spending with them. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all good in theory. Do you have any good hacks, either individually or as a company, in how to make these relationships at work stronger and more powerful?
I wouldn't call it a hack because there's no shortcuts. And at least that's what I've learned over the years. Because relationships and frankly, I think it's about trust and psychological safety. They get built over time, and it's consistency over time. And I think one of the things that we found really valuable just internally within Headspace, within our own team, is a company value we have: seek truth, speak truth. And really leaning into that concept that the best managers both solicit feedback and provide very explicit feedback. And through that, people grow closer, because if their direct reports feel like they're in it alongside them, and they're coaching them, and they're looking for ways to up-level them and make them better, they're going to want to keep working for them, and they want to do their best work with them. And they're going to know that when they fall down, they've got somebody alongside who's going to help guide them, but also provide them with that very sometimes difficult feedback that can be hard to process and lead to criticism and other issues. So I find that to be maybe one of the most important ingredients to success. But that being said, it's certainly not a hack, but I think the hack might be to make it very explicit as a core value of how you operate. And if that's the default, in some ways it reduces it increases the likelihood it happens more frequently, because everybody has permission to have that conversation, because it's not coming from a bad place. It's coming from a place of beginner's mind and of ensuring that people can actually improve and be better and do better.
I think this is really powerful, this idea of both speak, which managers are really good at, and also seek. Even if you just take the simple example of performance review, whether it's the once a year or 6 months or just kind of the ongoing, most managers are, more used to sharing feedback, but this asking for feedback. The best managers I've ever been around were the ones who were curious, and they were also humble. They're willing to say, look, I want to improve too, so I want you to write me a review to tell me how I can be a better leader over the next period of time too.
And it's so valuable, because that role modeling, cascades throughout the organization, because from the top all the way through, people have that default beginner's mind, which is another company value of ours. Like the two of those coming together is so powerful, because people then realize that that's okay. Like it's not going to be held against me. It's actually a part of us continue to be effective, and it certainly is part of the performance review process. And I would maybe the hack on that specifically is it shouldn't be part of the annual performance review process. It should be a regular part of conversation, and it could be the first agenda item on for one-on-ones, and those sorts of things that just start to ingrain it in the culture in a really meaningful way.
Yeah. So it occurs to me that you work at a company whose one of the main products is, a meditation app, which has all of this wisdom, right? Much of the world's wisdom in it. And I'm curious how that translates into the actual practices of being, the actual practices of running an organization. If you've been at other places and now here, I'm curious how it's different at Headspace, or is it just like every other company?
It's a good question. I think it's probably will forever be the thing that we need to make sure we're grappling with, because I think the reality is we're a work in progress too. Yeah. And, our mission is very much to ensure that everyone has access to lifelong mental health support. And we offer that through employers and through health plans and direct to consumer. And that supports everything from mindfulness all the way to this access to care. And we owe it to our own teams to ensure that they have the tools and resources and culture and context to do that effectively. And so I'd say we've done it well, and there are areas that we need to continue to improve and continue to invest. And I think a big part of it is probably, to be honest, the only constant is change. And we are feeling it and have been feeling it for almost years and years now, it feels like, and these like incredible macro challenging environments. And internally, every company then is as a result pivoting and twisting and turning. And as a result, then their teams are going through all of that outside and inside. And so creating an environment of resilience, like you were talking about with just before, and that bounce back muscle and these growth mindsets and these sort of this belief that we can do hard things, and that these sorts of resources can give people some of the tools and practical tactics to really be able to process those things. It's pretty powerful. And so it's something that we've clearly invested in within our own teams, and we've seen the very meaningful and real impact, not only in things like employee engagement and retention, but also on productivity and output and outcome.
Look, especially in the last 4 years with COVID, our willingness to talk about mental well-being in the workplace is much greater than it used to be. And I'm wondering if you could talk to some of the practices as HR leaders, as managers, that help continue to reduce the stigma about mental well-being.
I'll go on my soapbox is the wrong word, but I will make my plug to remind us all, especially as people leaders, to do you first. And I think that means starting by modeling that behavior and finding ways to whether it's adopting a mindfulness practice or being explicit about potentially going to see a therapist, putting that calendar invite on your calendar if it's public, finding ways to be able to just talk about what that means to you. And it may mean different things for different people. For me, a big part of my practice is being in nature and being under the redwood trees out here in California as a just incredible reset and in a way that I can affect do a walking meditation out in the forest. And but being explicit, and especially for individuals seeing it from the top. And so I have found that one of the most profound things that people could do is a fireside chat with an executive leader, CEO, if not someone else on the core team, who can talk about their journey. And it's incredibly difficult, and it's very difficult to be authentic and vulnerable, and certainly may not work in every scenario. But I found has just been probably the most explicit and direct way to start to break down those barriers and kind of rewire the company talk track that, our people aren't like that. Our people don't go through that. When the reality is everyone's going through something. And so I found that to be the most explicit and specific way to start to break down those barriers.
Sure. I'm sure we have some allies out there who are thinking, this is great. I totally want to do this at my company, but my whatever, the CFO, the CEO is holding the purse strings so tight that we can't invest, or we're not investing. What's at stake here? what can we share that will help, turn the tide that says, no, this is actually something we definitely should be investing in?
I think this is one of the biggest advantages in a post-COVID world is, I mean, we all saw the profound impact that sort of that had on the mental health and overall stress and anxiety levels across the world, across the United States, and certainly within companies. And so there's at least a case study. There is now, frankly, decades of research, but certainly over the last number of years, at Headspace and across the mental health ecosystem, companies that are publishing the very tangible and explicit and real impact on productivity, on business continuity, on our ability to ultimately achieve our objectives. So there's the very real financial, operational impacts, and we know it has a really meaningful impact on engagement and ultimately retention. And if we want our teams to be healthy, happy, productive, delivering great work, and retaining them, then we need to make these investments in these ways. And those investments don't have to be particularly "quote unquote" expensive. I mean, they can actually be highly efficient, if you will. And so I would say this is foundational. I mean, when we survey most leaders, and not just CHROs or people leaders, but executives, CEOs, it's oftentimes top 1, 2, 3 issues that they're thinking about. So I think a lot of that, there's a lot of great data out there. So I'd suggest one of the ways to start to solve for this is start to socialize some of that data. The other would be, there's now a lot of great case studies, and a lot of great companies who maybe were in that situation before, had this roadblock, didn't really know how to get started or how to address it, felt like their health plan or existing resources were insufficient, and they started testing, and they started trying, and they started then seeing very incredible results from making those investments. So I'd say those are the two maybe specific tactical ways that you could start to shift that conversation and at least try it out. But I think it's a combination of making those investments, but also, and the harder conversation is changing the context and culture that might be leading to some of those issues downstream.
Sure. Are there leaders or organizations that you see are like really getting this right?
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Which one? Yeah. I mean,
well, I hope that you have so many to pick from. That
yeah.
pick one.
That was actually
it's the other way where you're like, well.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, we have some incredible partners, at Headspace, and I think maybe one of the things that I think what was going through my head is who's had the courage to run this play, because it's not a 6 months, 12 months, and we're done scenario. This is a forever game, right? I mean, this is in many ways, I think, how companies should have been operating from the start, but few really invested in it because they didn't see or they didn't know how to connect the kind of tangible results. And so I've seen a lot of examples of it not working well. My fear and I think my strong advocacy is some level of regression to the mean. So in the post-COVID world, we tried that, and we may not need it anymore. Like we're out of that. We're out of that emergency.
We're good now.
We're good now. Exactly. That's a better way to put it. And I think that is, oh please, that's gonna bury that's just gonna brew underneath the surface, and that's gonna that's gonna show up in ways that you didn't really even appreciate or see. And so that would be my strong advocacy. I'm just as curious about the folks who maybe aren't thinking about it any longer. That's a much smaller cohort now, but making sure that really everyone realizes it's foundational to company's mission.
That would be a misspent crisis.
Well said. Well
You
said.
know? So one of my favorite sayings is, hey, if you're going to go to hell and back, don't come back empty-handed.
Yeah, that's true.
So if we're going to go through COVID and back, let's learn the lessons that we learned and keep them with us.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I know that you are, in addition to the COO, you're also the Chief People Officer. As you're thinking about your own team inside of Headspace, what's your focus on your folks for this year?
A few things. I'd say part of this is the advantage I have with the operational hat and a people hat is I get to think about and not or. I get to have a dialectical lens on the problem, which is it's not people or operations, it's people and operations. It's head and heart. It's combination of the two coming together. And so the kind of core priorities very much continue to be, continue to invest in trust in each other, and then leadership, which are so foundational. Psychological safety, so foundational to everything we're really talking about. It's continue to invest in increasing ongoing confidence in our end outcome, because these journeys are never straight lines. And then it's increasing a culture of high impact. And we're starting to talk about this in the context of Seek Truth, Speak Truth, but a feedback oriented culture, which is again forever goal. And it's undergirding, I think, all of these is really continuing to invest in our own team's own mental health resourcing and programming and support, and finding ways for that conversation to continue. Because even at an organization like ours that's so highly indexed in one way, we're not done. We whether it's in pockets of the organization or it's in certain situations that might be going through particularly high levels of growth or scale or change that can lead to stress and anxiety and other issues that we want to make sure we can continue to support. And so that's been a big focus of ours. And I'd say maybe as part of that, I think it's an ongoing focus on less but better. It's finding ways to focus on the essential. And if we can do that and really understand what's most important, we can actually say no to a lot of things that aren't critical and might be leading to undue stress.
Yeah. That's a good life lesson as individuals as well, too. Less but better. Yeah. Sounds like a good personal lesson for me, for sure. And just generally, I know that you've been at this for a long time with Ginger and then the merger. What most excites you right now about Headspace Health and where you're headed?
We're just getting started, Scott. It's hard to believe. Going on 12, 13, 15 years on this journey in some ways. And the world's changed a lot. And so I think the opportunity is there's been a recognition of just how critical this is to, so many people and so many organizations and so many governments and some, multiple levels of society, if you will. And there's been this groundswell of investment in this space to start to make a meaningful impact. And I think there's a number of really exciting ideas, and a number of those have started to translate into pretty scaled, impactful organizations. And I think I'm incredibly excited about, now that we've started to crack open that stigma, what it's going to mean for access to high quality care and support for so many people, and for so many people to start to adopt rather, a meaningful mindfulness and meditation practice, and bake that into the culture and the ways that they operate. So I think the last part I'd say is, and moving beyond sort of the traditional notions of mental health as quote unquote access to a therapist, to a really broader spectrum of everything from mental wellness and mindfulness, like we're describing, all the way to, real clinical care. And there's a lot of different ways and strategies we all use to support that. And I'm really excited about unlocking access for far more people to that support.
Amazing. And if people want to find out more or engage with you, what's the best way?
Headspace.com, always a great starting point. Jen and maybe you, Scott, emails, great. So Karan at headspace.com always works, as well as I tend to be pretty active on LinkedIn. So feel free to get in touch through there.
Beautiful. Okay, last question. Karan, what gives you hope?
We're a really resilient people and world, and we can do hard things. And the last few years have certainly proven it, and I think that'll continue to be true. So what gives me hope is I actually am incredibly grateful and hopeful for the resilience we've all built and that we're going to be building to do something special and to continue to take care of our people and treat this world well.
Love it. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I appreciate it in helping to break down the barriers for all of our increased well-being and mental well-being. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate it.
And thanks for being here and sharing your wisdom. I appreciate it.